Cleveland and Chicago are both going to have dome stadiums. They're going to get Super Bowls. New Orleans.
I don't know if Cleveland will.
Maybe not Cleveland. You're right. But, like, Chicago will get a Super Bowl. I mean, they go back to Miami. Every time a new stadium opens, they immediately get a new one. They get a Super Bowl, like, right away.
I believe that billionaires should pay for their own fucking football stadiums.
That's Bill Simmons in a trailer for the ill-fated HBO program Any Given Wednesday. Didn't last long, but that clip will last forever because everyone agrees with it. Who thinks that someone who owns a sports franchise, a constantly appreciating asset, that they generally lucked into because their parents were the ones who acquired it, should then be able to hold a city to the fire and force a city to spend taxpayer money on a new stadium with the promise of more jobs, which is a load of crap. But it feels like, Joe, that could be something we're about to see with another team in town.
Yeah, the only people that think that they shouldn't have to pay for the stadiums is them. Is the owners themselves.
Right. Look, I get it. It's expensive. Build it yourself.
Yeah, you have the funds.
You should have the funds.
If you don't, then you're probably a kid of the original owner, and you didn't earn your income. You didn't earn the ability to buy a football team. Usually, that's the guys who have to ask for a stadium. But most of these billionaires have the money, and they just ask anyways. If the Dallas Mavericks really were to move to Las Vegas at some point, the new family that owns it, they would be asking Las Vegas to build the stadium. That's the Oakland A's had the ability to do it. They just wanted the stadium to pay for it. It's always the same song and dance that happens, and it felt like this was inevitable for me that at some point the Houston Texans would ask for a new stadium. And it feels like now we're on the cusp of that.
Yes. This is an article from the Houston Chronicle with Jonathan Alexander and Dylan McGinnis. The article begins bringing up the new Houston Texans president, Mike Tomlin. On his resume, McNair touted that Tomlin has extensive history in stadium development. Tomlin was an executive at Legends, a stadium operations firm co-founded by the Dallas Cowboys. He worked on arrangements for new NFL stadiums in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and Buffalo. And since the Texans have started negotiating a new lease agreement at NRG Stadium, a publicly financed home that they've been in for now 22, going into 23 years, apparently this stadium is in average or below average condition compared to its peers, with a lot of needs from deferred maintenance over the year. So you read this article in the Chronicle, and everyone's of the belief that eventually the Texans are going to push for a new stadium, which is interesting given that they have also pushed for and funded renovations inside NRG Stadium over the last couple of years.
I mean, at some point, I guess it becomes like cost prohibitive to just keep investing into the stadium if you could just build a new thing. It does like that part of the article where they talk about maintenance that got away from them, basically. It's like, well, then you're going to punish the taxpayers because you didn't take care of your stadium better. I mean, it only broke this year when the roof fell apart. The roof fell apart a little bit. It also, it does make more business sense in terms of, I think, from the Texans' perspective of things that they want. You're getting passed by in terms of just not just like maybe what's happening in the stadium, but the look of the stadium. You're not as, appealing as the others. And what's happening across the NFL.
But for what?
Super Bowls. They ain't getting another one until they get a new stadium.
You really don't think so?
No, I don't, because the new stadiums are all going to keep getting it. Like, Cleveland and Chicago are both going to have dome stadiums. They're going to get Super Bowls. New Orleans.
I don't know if Cleveland will.
Maybe not Cleveland. You're right. But, like, Chicago will get a Super Bowl. I mean, They go back to Miami. Every time a new stadium opens, they immediately get a new one. They get a Super Bowl like right away.
I'll also believe that Chicago actually is capable of building a new stadium within the next 10 years when I see it, just given, the limitations of that state, which I know you're very familiar with.
No, they said they're going to break ground this year. I don't believe them at all.
Yeah, but I also get what you're saying. Like, that is definitely the current trend in the NFL.
You have Vegas, LA, Miami, all new stadiums getting Super Bowls.
How much does the Super Bowl really help a town?
I don't think it can't help that much.
I mean, sure, there's going to be tons of hotels for a week, but it's more a vanity project for the owners to host the Super Bowl and host all the other owners of the NFL than it is to bring in jobs into the city. Like, it's a load of crap.
But none of this is for us.
A lot of the Super Bowl jobs are volunteer work, which kind of goes through the cracks. So you're right. It's not for us. And I don't think the stadium's that bad. I really don't. Now, again, I would prefer the press box not be up in outer space.
Yeah.
I've said that a million times. But stadium works. It's loud. It has air conditioning. The air conditioning is not, like at Dyken Park, a problem. If you build a bigger stadium, it's probably going to be worse for concerts. And maybe that's something that the Houston Rodeo looks at and says, okay, well, we could maybe make this better, and it becomes some sort of teamwork agreement with the Texans. All I know is I don't want to pay for this. And what are the Texans going to do to make us pay for it? What are they going to do? Are they going to flex like the Oilers did? Are they going to do what the Oilers did all those years ago? Because all of those renovations for the Astrodome eventually weren't enough. They wanted a new stadium, and Houston said, F off. I think Houston's a lot more likely to say F off to this team. And I mean, okay, I suppose there are other places to go. Are they going to be better than Houston, Texas? As far as just a huge market, do you really want to start fresh when you're finally getting a semblance of relevance across league circles? Because the last 2 years, there's been a little bit of excitement, even if you were underwhelming this past year. I'm really curious as to if they have the balls. And I saw this on the Twitch too. Yeah, I don't buy that Cal McNair, says Coug Blaze, would move this team. So what kind of leverage can they exert on this city to force us to pay for a new stadium, which I think these days is an FU to everybody that lives in the city?
You can't. The fan base is not loyal enough to even threaten the idea of moving. I don't think people stick around for this team.
I'm with you. I mean, I think if they start strong-arming here, they're treading right back into the waters from which they just emerged.
Yeah.
Where they, like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, crawled through that tunnel with Deshaun Watson and Jack Easterby and Bill O'Brien, the river of poo, and they came out on the other side with with C.J. Stroud and with DeMeco Ryans. You really want to piss this away?
No, because like the fans, I think, just bail immediately. Maybe not to full capacity, but if you threaten to leave, this franchise has not accomplished enough to warrant staying loyal to a city that's already lost a football team.
I'm with you.
So like they'll just bail. And even the idea of like building like a bigger stadium, like you really want to build a bigger stadium so people can clown you more when your seats are half empty at kickoff. Like it's just going to look even worse. I don't think this is a necessity. I think they just want it because they want, and I know it's a fair point that Twitch brought up. They just hosted the national championship game. I get it, but they've hosted 2 Super Bowls, and I really don't think another one's coming. They planned this thing out like 5, 6, 7 years in advance. The lease goes through 2032, the current Texans lease. The Super Bowl is already pretty much planned out to that point. They're not on it. So if they want to be on that next wave, it's going to have to be in a different stadium.
From the 713, the Superdome's old, keeps getting renovations, keeps getting Super Bowls. That's fair. New Orleans is also just a better Super Bowl city. Here's the other thing that would be working against it. Okay, Houston builds a new stadium. They're going to get 1 Super Bowl max. Remember, it took them a while to get that second Super Bowl. And here's the thing, and anyone who comes down here, they bitch and moan about it. Houston is so spread out, and no one understands how spread out it is until they actually get down here. So generally, the coverage of the city as a whole ends up being less than favorable from people out of market. And if this is a reason that you are building the new stadium to host a Super Bowl, it's one that's going to get you one. Is it really worth it to have that prestige? We hosted a Super Bowl. In my opinion, no, it's not. And the stadium's fine, and they can kick rocks.
But the other part about this too, where this is not for immediately, because I don't think the McNairs are on their rush to sell the team. But if you own a stadium, it does increase your evaluation in terms of what the franchise is worth by a ton. We saw Washington spike as soon as they started even talking about building a new stadium. I mean, these teams are going up in value. We saw what happened with Vegas and LA. It just goes up and up and up and up if you own a stadium.
Texans are one of the most valuable franchises in the NFL, but if they move to another city, they lose all of it. I think a lot of this has to do with just how big the actual city is. And I saw someone text in, San Antonio or Oklahoma City. Sure.
I don't think there's any way they
Sure.
leave.
Good luck. Good luck. Honestly, if that's what they want to do, good luck. Best of luck. Get my Sundays back.
Where's Hannah McNair from?
Good question. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know if she's from
the
Houston
McNairs
or
are going to
not.
move him maybe back to Charleston, South Carolina, but they've been doing all this pandering to Houston over the last couple of years, and it'll look completely hollow.
Yeah, it'll then look completely hollow. Unlike right now, where it doesn't look completely hollow. I mean, this is the one city, or not the one city, but it's the one city where you go. I mean, it's the fourth biggest city in America. It's in Houston, Texas, the football hotbed in this country. They've already done it once, where they kind of called the owner's bluff on this.
Yeah,
like they go ask Amy Adams Strunk. Like, no, they'll let you move.
It's really crazy that, and a lot of people are in agreement here. It's for 8 Sundays a year, maybe 9, 10, 11. Oh,
Yeah, the wild card round. Don't forget that one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm making a motion.
Yeah.
Cool. That's neat. That's so awesome. I do not understand why any of us should say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I really don't. And I'm curious as to what kind of argument that they come up with. I really want to hear them try to sell this to us. Because ultimately, it's like, oh, well, we just want our corporate sponsors to be a little happier for the games that they don't show up to until the second quarter. You know, like, that's what it's going to be.
I feel like the only way like this even gets an ounce of momentum is if it starts with the Astrodome comes down, and that's where the new stadium goes. Because at least the Astrodome then goes away. Because like you can't like where are you gonna like if you're gonna build a new stadium on the same property or maybe across the street where Astroworld used to be, right? Like where else would you build a stadium? Like you're not gonna go to Sugarland.
There's that East Downtown area that's developing, so I think that might be the area that's next.
That would be interesting
Because there's a lot of stuff that's popping up in that area, and I mean, I think one of the big complaints about NRG Stadium is the location. It's inconvenient. Number one. Number two, there's just nothing there. Like there's some nice neighborhoods, and then there's a bunch of strip malls. It's kind of out of the way. There's not really restaurants. There's just nothing.
It's like in its own part of town.
Right. And it feels like it's always been about the rodeo and maybe Astroworld before. And, of course, you got the old genital wart-looking Astrodome sitting next to the NRG Stadium area. I mean, I'm not even sure that area is big enough to build a new stadium on. And then, of course, the rodeo would be probably pissed off that they're building. And the rodeo is a big deal. The rodeo would probably be mad that the Astrodome's getting knocked over and there's going to be construction taking place in the midst of their grounds.
If you did the East Downtown, that might help the argument to sell fans and the city on a little bit. I really struggle to think of any way in which you could logically say it's in the same general area and anyone would buy into that because it's inconvenient, it's terrible to get to, it's a miserable experience in and out of there. If you did East Downtown, like maybe you can make a small argument, but I struggle to think that anyone's gonna be like really excited about this.
I don't know the ways in which they would raise the taxes for this, but like, another property tax increase here, which we just dealt with one because of some emergency fund that Lena Hidalgo pulled out of her because of the derecho that we dealt with last year. Like we've already got an increase on the horizon. So like, now on top of that, you're going to add this too. But I wonder if we even have a say. Because we all voted to demolish the Astrodome, and guess what? That thing's still there. We voted to get rid of it, and they're like, we're going to make it a landmark, you silly and they pulled it right underneath our noses. They did it. It's crazy.
They should move and make NRG a landmark.
Oh, my God.
I would actually support that.
You know what? How about that's what we do?
You just never blow up a stadium ever again.
Well, if we call NRG Stadium historical landmark, can they leave the stadium? I mean, Ed Emmett made the Astrodome historical landmark. At NRG Stadium, you know what we saw? We saw 2 Patriots Super Bowl victories. That's pretty awesome. We saw Janet Jackson's boob. Awesome.
A lot of big things have
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
There.
Lady Gaga dropped through the roof.
Yes.
When it was
Yeah.
open, one of the
Yep.
6 times it
There
was
wasn't
open.
a hole there. Yeah.
Right. It's one of the least used stadiums with a retractable roof in the United States of America. That's something historical landmark. So I want to do something to just mess with the Texans here because it would be really funny if all of a sudden they couldn't move. Stop. Just spare me with this. Oh, we need a new stadium. No, you don't. You need to actually do anything of value, which is make it to the AFC Championship game once. Good God.
Yeah, it also just like rings so hollow. You mentioned at the beginning that like in the report it says that the maintenance has lapped on it. It's like, well, whose fault is
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
Like,
yes.
it's not our fault that the maintenance lands. Whoever owns it.
That would be that. That is like the. How does it lapse?
Yeah, like sorry, it lapsed.
But also, like, where? Like, besides the roof falling apart from a hurricane or derecho, whichever one it was, NRG's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with NRG.
Hey, the Astrodome, which has not been touched in like 25 years, guess what? Still standing. Oh, we need maintenance. We're going to need $1 billion worth of maintenance in the next 30 years. Oh, you built something in 2002 that can't last another 30 years?
Could they just spend a ton of money to fix the Astrodome and let them play there?
No. Stop.